Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Gretchen Huebner. I'm one of the founders of Kodable.
I'm Bree Gray, our head of curriculum.
And we are so excited to talk with you guys today about the Hour of Code. I don't know how many of you, I'm sure that for some of you, you're veterans at this point. This is probably your fourth or fifth year doing the Hour of Code, and you probably could lead one of these yourselves. But for some of you, this might be your first Hour of Code. So we'll just start from the beginning. What is it? Why is it important? Why is it so cool? Why is it worth doing? So the Hour of Code is a big international event put on by Code.org and Computer Science Education Week to just promote computer science education, with the goal of getting every kid to try 1 hour of coding. And one of the side effects of this is that so many schools have started to realize just how exciting it can be for them, how much engagement they can get, how important it is for their students to start thinking critically and start using their brains to solve real world problems. So it's pretty cool. It's really exciting. And if this is your first time, get ready. It's so much fun. I'm really excited for you. So we are going to just run through a few things. We're going to go over a couple different ways that you can play Codable this Hour of Code. If you're using Codable for the Hour of Code, we'll talk a little bit about how you should prepare, what you should prepare for with Codable, like setting up your account and things like that, but also how you can prepare your classroom, talking to students, talking to other staff members, what you can do to kind of get the whole community ready. And then we'll go into the specific activities that we've added for this year. We're really excited. This year's theme is creativity. So we have some really cool, exciting new activities that are promoting creativity and design thinking, and they're for all ages, well, K to 5. And we'll show you some of those. Then we will go over some of the lesson plans that we have from previous years. If you decide you want to do a little bit more structured program, you can do that. And then we'll get into your questions. I know a lot of you submitted questions when you RSVP'd. Thank you. I compiled all of them into a short list, and I put it in the Google Doc that I posted in the chat on the side of the video. Feel free to submit if something pops up and you have another question, feel free to write it in there. We have it right here so we can see. So we'll be pausing every now and then to answer questions, and then we have time at the end for more questions as well. So we will be sure to answer all your questions, and we're so excited. So let's get started. So the first thing to note about doing the Hour of Code is all the different ways that you can participate. So there are what's called unplugged activities that take place offline, usually with a worksheet or some sort of game that you do with your students. And then there's online activities. But Codable specifically has 3 different ways. We have our free-to-play online Hour of Code site. That's game.codable.com/hour of code. And it's really great if you want to just kind of set your kids up and you don't really plan on doing any sort of introduction or instruction and you just want them to do free play. You can do that. I'll get into how you do that in a second. Another option is our structured Hour of Code activities. And you can choose to we have lessons that go along with them if you choose to do that. Bree's going to talk about that in a minute. But again, you can just set the students up. It has a video, it has a prompt for both their guided challenges and then their creative challenge. And then if you decide you want to do sort of a combination of all these things, we have structured lessons, which have an unplugged component, all of them do, where the kids are practicing a coding concept offline together as a class. It's a lot of fun. And then you can go online into Codable, into any of the activities that we have available and play there. You can also download Codable from the App Store. We just released a brand new Hour of Code update. So if you haven't updated your iPads and you're planning on using iPads, you need to get that update. It's going to have all of these activities in it. So yeah, I guess from there, I'll go ahead and show, should I go ahead and show the Hour of Code
look
site?
at, yeah.
Okay.
Just while Gretchen's doing that, I see a few people saying there may be some audio issues. It seems as though some of you can hear us, so if you can't, maybe check the settings on the device you're watching. It seems like it's fine for some people, so just check your settings.
Yeah, sometimes if you're watching in Chrome, it needs to be shut down and restarted. Okay, so if you are going to have your kids just start up with Codable and play, and you don't want to set up an account, a Codable account, that's totally fine. I think probably most of you have Codable accounts, but if you don't, that's totally fine too. You're just gonna go to game.codable.com. This is probably the link that you wanna share with your students, or you're gonna open up Codable in the app on your iPads and just click play without saving. You're gonna select playing at school. And this will create an anonymous profile for your students to play. They will not be able to save their progress unless you create an account. So this login and save is gonna prompt you to set up an account. But from here, these are all of our Hour of Code activities that the students can complete. If you want them to just go free play and explore, you can hit explore, and this will take them off into Codable. And from here, there's different activities that they can play. There's Smeeborg, Asteroidia, Bug World. We can get more into that later, but that's how you set up free play. And if you decide you want to do the structured activities, we'll get into that in a second. But first, let's go through this as if you have an account, because I think a lot of you are going to have accounts that you're using with classes set up for your students. So we'll go as if we're playing that.
Yeah, and I think one point to mention here is if you plan on continuing with Codable beyond the Hour of Code, this is a great option to set up an account. I think a lot of students will be bummed if their progress is not saved. So if you know it's something you're going to be doing, continuing with our free trial after this week or after you do the Hour of Code, I would definitely set up that account so that your kids will have their progress saved from the Hour of Code.
Definitely, and there's some other cool things, like you can check their progress. You can send home their creations, so you can actually print it out and send it home with them. It's got the code that they've written, their character that they created, and different things. So you'll also get certificates with their names already printed on them. We'll show you where you can download just a generic certificate where you can write in their names if you don't have an account, but if you do have one, it's nice because you don't have to go and write all their names out. So, okay, let's go ahead and see as if we have an account set up. So actually, we'll talk a little bit about how you get set up. So if you decide to set up an account, the things that you're gonna wanna have prepared for the Hour of Code are to create an account and set up your classes. It takes minutes. It's very quick. This is what your dashboard looks like. You can go through this quick wizard. You just create a class name. I'm going to create code. I'm going to say this is a first grade class. And you just add your name, your students' names. You can actually copy and paste from a roster if you have a digital roster. There's also other ways that you can import students using Google Classroom and Clever. You have that. And then this is the most important part. You're going to want to set up a class code. So this is something that your students will use to log in and actually pick their name from the roster. So you want to make it something kind of memorable, or you can choose from one of the options that we have here. But for myself, I'm just going to say Codable, Power of Code. That's probably long enough. Okay. Save and continue. All right. So what you're going to do is use this link to get your students logged in to Codable. So this actually is a unique URL. If you click it, oh, I need to have my students. Okay. Yeah, so you can copy this link and save it to either your class dashboard or your class website, or if you just want to post this somewhere for your students to get to. If you are using Codable on the iPad, you're just going to use that the class code that we created. So your students will be prompted to enter that class code. It'll download this roster. They'll never actually have to enter it again. It's just that one time. And then they select their name. And we're in. And here you can see the hour of code activities. You can encourage them to do any of these that are grade appropriate. If you decide you're going to be using any of the lesson plans, another thing to do to prepare is to maybe print that lesson plan that you're going to be using. And we'll get into the lesson plans here in a second. So once you have Codable set up, like you just saw, it's really simple. There's a few things that you might want to do to prepare your class. So your students and your school community for the hour of code. If you are the only teacher in your school doing it, cool, awesome, way to go, good for you. A lot of you asked about how to invite others to get involved and participate, and that's amazing, way to go. I think that one of the best ways to do that is to just invite them to your class for one of your lessons, one of your hour of code lessons. Let them just observe, let them be maybe your assistant if there's questions, or just kind of mill around the room. Invite administrators, invite other teachers, invite parents even. Parents really get a kick out of this. Don't be afraid to invite people and kind of make it a party because it should be a lot of fun. The other thing to do is to set up classroom expectations for your students. If you feel like this is needed, if you've already done this in the school year, you might not need to, but I like to always encourage students to ask 3 then me so that you're not inundated with questions, because it is a time for exploration, problem solving, really thinking through difficult puzzles, basically, using all of our logic skills and our problem solving skills. So encourage kids to work with a partner to solve problems before they come running to you for answers, because you might not know. That's the thing.
And one thing too that I just want to add that Gretchen and I have experienced in our time going into classrooms is definitely introducing the tutorials for each of the activities as a whole group first. So each activity is meant for students to be able to do on their own. There will be a tutorial that walks them through. Sometimes there's a video. But especially with younger kids, sometimes there can be, an issue with someone's headphones and they can't hear the video, or they clicked off the tutorial and they didn't actually see it. So I think even before they get onto their devices, maybe just going through that introduction as a whole group. And then if they, see it for a second time on their own, that's fine too. But just setting it up so everyone knows what the activity is and kind of how to get started will kind of make that transition a little easier once they get on to their own device.
Definitely. The last thing to do to sort of prepare yourself for this is have a backup plan. Most of the sites, the activity partners, are going to have their highest traffic of the year on their websites. So there might be some connectivity issues. You're going to have a lot of students accessing your Wi-Fi network in your school at the same time, and that might cause some traffic issues. So just have a backup plan, maybe an unplugged option. Like I said, we're going to get into some of those in a minute, but just have that in case you have a few minutes where there's loading issues, or everybody needs to refresh or whatever. Have that as a backup just in case. I always like to let people know that that's available if they need it. But if you're using Codable on the iPad, you shouldn't have any problems because it can work offline. So if for any reason it loses connection, whenever it regains that connection, it'll send all their progress to us anyway. So that it'll be there the next time they log in. Yeah, the other thing is if you do have issues, feel free to email us anytime. Our whole team we're on high alert this whole week. So support@Kodable.com goes to all of us, and we'll be quick to respond throughout the week. So, okay, I think now we can get into the activities.
Excellent.
Yay, awesome. I'm so excited. We worked really hard on these, and I hope that you guys enjoy them. So I'll go through these by age, starting with K to 2, which actually brings me to a lot of the questions were concerning how to teach preschool or kindergarten or first grade students. And Codable, we started our company with 5-year-olds in mind. We actually worked our way up from that. So it's very well suited for a kindergarten student. I think that once you take a look at some of these activities and also take a look at some of the lesson plans, you'll find that it's very simple for them to get started, especially if you're using iPads. I definitely recommend tablets for young students, just because the motor skills of using a mouse or like a trackpad is really difficult. But if you have iPads and you use a class code and you have that class set up for them whenever they get to your room, then it's really simple. They just find their name and then they can start. So it's a really quick process to get them logged in, and then after that, it's basically go, and then they're off and going. So we'll start with.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something really quickly. You can control the sound on each of your devices, but typically, I would say to teachers, if everyone's doing this at the same time, I usually tell teachers to turn the music off, but in these tutorial cases, it's actually different because we do have videos with instruction. So if you have headphones, or that, you have some way of managing students watching things and listening to things at the same time, that's definitely something to be prepared for when you get into this.
That's a very good point, definitely. Okay, so for the Maze Maker challenge, some of you may have seen this last year. We've actually updated it a little bit, but some of the challenges are similar, but I think that,
it's a similar concept in terms of what students are doing. The unplugged version is the same, so it's just giving them a structured way to get introduced to this. But as Gretchen was saying, it's a little different on screen this year.
Yes, and so what you're going to want to do is have them select their grade. If it's their first exposure to Codable, you might want to have them, like if they're in second grade, you might want to have them try the first grade option before jumping to second grade, just if it's their first time using Codable, because it does get into conditions in the second grade tutorial, which is a more advanced concept. Some students might struggle with it a little bit. So you might want to start them with first grade, and then as a reward, they can move on to the second grade option, or they can move on to the build your own fuzz if they finish early. But we didn't have that in any of the classes really that we went to. So I'm going to go through. So they're going to see 5 levels to complete, and they can go through these 5 levels. It's going to be a variety of Codable mazes that they have to solve. Each one is slightly different, or some of them are harder, some of them are easier. So we tried to make it a nice balance. Then once they've completed these 4 levels, this button will turn green, start my creative challenge. They can click that and they'll see the prompt to make some kind of a geometric shape in the Maze Maker challenge. So that's that one. Actually, I'm gonna go to Maze Maker so you guys can see what it actually looks like for those of you.
Yeah, the great thing about Maze Maker is it leaves room for so much creativity, but especially with K through 2 students, obviously they need some kind of structure. So as Gretchen's going to show you with our Maze Maker, it's kind of a blank canvas. So giving them some kind of challenge is really what we're aiming for to get their creative, ideas flowing. And then beyond this, they'll be able to create nearly anything that they want out of this. We have words, we have numbers, letters, things like that. But it is definitely an abstract kind of blank canvas that they're starting with.
So it'll give them a prompt that says create, a shape. I think for the first grade one, it's make a square. And they just start by drawing. And they can do any kind of square they want. It does not need to be a perfect square. Well, I mean, a square is a perfect square, but it doesn't need to look just like this. Like they can do little squares, they can do big squares, however they feel. We added new maze decorations this year for the Maze Maker challenge. It's pretty neat. So they can play around with those. We've got some little gnomes that are adorable. Got some worms. Got some rocks. We've got some pools. And then they just place their stars wherever they want them to go.
And we should point out here that the maze must be solvable for them to be able to save it. So placing the stars, they need to put them in areas where they're going to get them when they test and solve their maze.
Right. So then they have to actually try their maze and solve it. And then once their maze is solved, it will save. And if you are using a Codable class, if you've set up a class ahead of time, it'll actually share it with the entire class. So the whole class will be able to view mazes. So you can see here are some mazes that were created by my class. I've got a lot of them.
And this is great because students can create mazes for each other. You can create mazes for your students to do. You can pick a student and say, everyone's going to do Katniss Everdeen's maze today. It's really a good way to collaborate and have kids sharing their work with each other.
Yeah, so that's Maze Maker. And now we'll go back to Build a Fuzz. Did you want to go over the lesson for this one?
Yeah, so the Maze Maker challenge lesson is the same as it was last year. So as Gretchen was mentioning, it will prompt students to make a shape. And so we did this last year with K through 5. So in our lesson plan, we actually have Common Core math standards aligned. So each grade level, and if you want to do this with 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it's in that lesson plan, is prompted to do some kind of math activity based on their Common Core standards.
Yep. So to view that lesson plan, you're just going to go to Kodable.com/hour of code. You can see all of these activities here. If you use this button, the Play on Learn button, it's going to take you directly to the Maze Maker activity. Same for Build Your Own Fuzz and the Game Maker. If you click View Lesson Plan, this is where you can see the lesson. So you can see the objectives, how to access Maze Maker.
And that's outside of the Hour of Code activity, how you would access it if you weren't in the Hour of Code site.
And then, yeah, all of the Maze Maker prompts. Yeah, so, and then you have the lesson materials that you can download. Okay, now we'll go ahead and get into Build Your Own Fuzz. And to just demonstrate this, I'll go ahead and click on this button. I'm going to play without saving. All right, so now you see like it's pointing at the one that I want to click on, which is really nice if you're wanting to make it easy for yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna click Build Fuzzes. This one works a little bit different from the Maze Maker. We start with a creative challenge. So this is where students will actually build a character. And I can show you how that works. So every student will get this video. It's a little prompt about building a character and thinking about the fuzzes, thinking about a character from the story that they like, what characteristics make them who they are, and then using that as inspiration to create their own character. So once they watch that, they can enter their fuzz's name. Gretchen Fuzz. They're going to drag over all of the characteristics for their character. And then they can actually edit all of these properties of their character. So if I want to change the smile, I want to have my fuzz stick their tongue out. I can do that. If I want to change their eye color, I can make their eyes red. And then say I want to change the color of the body. Do that. So this is all JavaScript here. So this is a little bit more of an advanced tutorial. It's for 2nd grade and up. We definitely recommend using it with students that age and maybe not younger, just because they need to be able to read that, you know, they're going to be editing the body, the eyes, the mouth. They're going to be changing the properties of that. It can be done with younger students, but I would stick with Maze Maker if it were me. And then you can add accessories to your fuzz. So I'm going to give my fuzz a crown. And I'm going to give them some sparkles, because who doesn't like sparkles? And I think just for good measure, I'll add a mustache. Okay, and I'm going to save my fuzz. So if you are using Codable with a class, this fuzz will actually show up on your teacher dashboard, and you can print out the code that they just wrote, and also a picture of their fuzz that they created.
Yeah, and in this unplugged activity that goes with this, the code for a fuzz is used. So basically, to kind of go with this building characters activity, we give an example of that code that Gretchen's talking about. So anytime your students build a fuzz with our fuzz builder, you'll get to see the code that they write on their dashboard. So this worksheet that goes with this activity is actually giving an example of that JavaScript for a fuzz. And then students are kind of planning their fuzz before they get on and do that activity. So they're just filling in those values that Gretchen was showing you could modify to write what their fuzz is going to look like before they do it.
Yeah, so you can send this home with them along with the printout if you decide to print out your students' characters. So here's that lesson. And then, yeah, so then the students can start solving mazes with their character. And it's going to go through a quick tutorial, but the levels get pretty difficult pretty fast. We introduce conditions. There's some pretty tricky levels in here that you definitely need to use your problem-solving skills to figure out. I'd encourage you to have students working in pairs if they're a 2nd grade class, because it can get kind of tricky, but it's definitely fun. And honestly, it's a great opportunity if the whole group is struggling on one to put it up on the board and kind of solve it together as a class. Okay. So that is build your own fuzz. All right, now we'll get into creating games. So this is our most advanced tutorial or activity for the hour of code. We're getting into creating a game with JavaScript. And so what the students are going to do is actually actually.
And this is probably the one that I would most recommend using, the unplugged materials that go with it. It can be an awesome chance for especially your older students to really engage with each other and start learning about each other's preferences when it comes to games and design, just the design process in general, which we'll get into after Gretchen shows you this. But I highly recommend including the unplugged portion for this activity.
Yep, definitely. So what students are going to do, they're going to play through some levels. This is mainly to introduce the game concept that they're going to be building off of. So this is Asteroidia. This is where we introduce variables to students. So this code that's written here is actually the code that you would write in JavaScript if you were going to add a string called purple. So purple is this variable, this furball that we just put into this container, which is a metaphor for actually using variables in programming. So once you have that, you can match it to the asteroids over here. So the object of the game is to clear the asteroid field so that you can move on to the next lesson. And when you combine the correct colors, they will actually cascade and fall. So this was just cleared with one shot because I matched those two blue sections together. The same is going to happen here. So I'm going to use a red, and it's going to cause a cascade effect. This is kind of like Candy Crush, if any of you guys are familiar with that. I promise you, your students will have no problem with this, but I'm going to go through it with you guys because we get a lot of questions about this game. So then the yellow, then the green, then the blue, then the purple, then these rocks will disappear. We're off. So this is just a simple way of getting students familiar with what variables look like and the idea of putting a value into a container and then matching it with something. This one is a little bit harder, so I need to think. Okay, so we're going to use blue. And I'm going to put a green. Although I think those are going to collapse. That'll collapse. It should work. I'm going to try it with just blue. I'm going to need red. Okay, I'm going to try another red too. Okay, I'm going to start with blue and see what happens. Yay! Okay, good job. So then we clear the red, and we're off. All right, I think you guys probably have it figured out by now, but just in case, I'm gonna show you this one. So I'm gonna hit this pink in the middle. It's gonna cause everything else to fall and match. And we should be able to do it in one hit. Yes. Woo! Yay! Okay. I think that's the last one. Yeah. So then the students can start their creative challenge. And it's the same scenario. It's going to give them a video prompt. You're probably going to want to have headphones available for this. Just talking about game designers and how they come up with games, what they're thinking when they're making games. They're not just, going through it without anyone in mind. They usually have a specific person in mind that they think of as their end user who's going to be playing their game. And so we're going to encourage students to think of someone in particular, what kind of games they like, and try to make a game for them.
Yeah, and the unplugged activity actually has them partnering with someone in class with kind of an interview sheet, just asking them about some of their preferences, if they like games easy or hard, gauging their level of experience with games, all of these things that a game designer would keep in mind before they build their game. And then the idea is they'll design this game for that person and then get feedback from that person as a user. And then they can make iterations and change the game.
Great. So once that video is finished playing, it'll walk them through editing their first part of the game. So this again is all in JavaScript. These here are the properties of the game. So we're going to give our program a name. We're going to name our game. So my first.
And just something to kind of add in here too. I know we talked a little bit about classroom expectations, but this is a great chance to include some digital citizenship, perhaps, especially for older kids with naming games. You know, going over what's appropriate for games and fuzz names. This is just a good opportunity to keep that in mind, as students do have the freedom to kind of type in their own creative ideas.
So I just edited the property for the number of bins that are going to be available for my player. The more bins you have, the easier your game will be because you'll have more colors to match with your asteroids. Okay, we're going to test our game. There are so many properties your students can get into to edit their game. This just walks them through a couple, and then they can go back and make changes if they need to. So we're playing in endless mode now. The objective is to just last as long as you can. And then they'll keep coming in. So if I want to edit my code, if I want to edit my game, I'm going to go back to my code file here. Yes. And I can say I want to add instructions to my game. So I'm going to go to game instructions. Match the
Clear the field.
Yeah, there we go. The field. Okay. Perfect. And I'm going to save that. So now my player will have instructions. And I want to add a little bit of pizzazz to my game. So I'm going to add a smoke trail to my fur balls whenever they go. I'm going to add a rainbow. Great. And one more thing. I'm going to edit the properties of my asteroids over here. If I want to make it difficult for my player, I can do some things over here. I can change the asteroid drop direction. I can add rocks, which don't match any of the fur balls. You actually have to make them collide to disappear. I'm going to add, I can add taco time, which is pretty fun. Taco time is true. And let's give it a try. So you can see how great this is for design thinking, getting students working collaboratively, thinking of their end user as somebody who has emotions and has not only is wanting to play a fun game, but striving to make a game that is well balanced for them. And balance, I believe, is one of the vocab words that's in the lesson, talking about making a well balanced game and why that's important. And it's fun too to talk with students about what properties you can change to make your game easier or harder. There's specific ones that you can use to make your game easier or more difficult. And they'll start to figure that out as they play around with it. Okay, so I think now is a great time for questions. Do we have any questions on anything we've covered so far? We'll just wait. We're on a little bit of a delay so that if we have any issues, we can solve them. Okay. Oh, one more. I don't know. Okay, looks like there's no questions, so go ahead and move on. If you have questions, go ahead and post them in just a minute. So we talked about. All right, the last thing that we want to go over is our structured lesson plans. So we went over kind of the unplugged portion of all of these creative challenges that we've added this year, but we have so many lesson plans that you can choose from for the Hour of Code. A number of you asked about how to manage or sort of juggle teaching kindergarten through 5th grade for the Hour of Code. If you have lots of grades that you are teaching and you don't want to have to do a different lesson for every day or every class, we do have lessons that build off of each other. So it's a similar lesson, but it's adapted for each grade level. So I'll go ahead and show you that, and that'll bring us to all of the others. Okay, so you're gonna go back to that Kodable.com/hourofcode page, and just scroll down to the bottom and you'll see lesson plans for teachers. This very top one, Introduction to Programming, is a perfect introduction to coding. It is very similar to the very first lesson that we include in Codable as part of our curriculum. It's been adapted for each grade level. So you just select the grade that you're looking for and it'll bring that grade up. So if I'm going to teach my 1st grade class, it's going to bring up the adapted version of this lesson for a 1st grade class. And each lesson builds off of the idea of programming a robot, the robot being maybe a co-teacher, another student, a parent, another, a person basically who's pretending to be a robot, programming them to move across the room. And then we give you code that you're going to write up on the board together to solve this problem. And then you can go into Codable and play levels that are picked out specifically for this lesson. I'll go ahead and show you so we've got vocab cards for this, which is great. And I think we have, so that's where you can find all of the vocab for that. And you're going to use symbols like this to actually program your robot. Yeah. Anything you want to add about this, Steve?
No, we do have a couple questions coming in though.
Okay.
For middle school and high school kids. So we obviously adapted this, across K through 5. Take a look at that lesson. I think you'll find ways you can adapt it to things you're already doing with middle or high school students. And then we're going to get into it in a second, but my favorite lesson for older students, and I think it would be really interesting. I'd love to hear, how this goes and see the work done with middle schoolers and high schoolers on our Women in Tech lesson. This is our social studies lesson, and it spans over a few days, so you could do this for the entire week. It really digs into opinion writing. It's heavy on the ELA front, but also social studies. It's just exploring the roles of women in technology with examples and portions of writing and definitely reading too. So I would love to hear how that goes. If you try that with a middle school or high school class, we'd love to see the work that comes out of that.
Yeah, so this has 3 days of content. Again, can be spanned out across the entire week. Each day has a video prompt and has some really great questions to have students kind of researching and thinking and talking and sharing opinions.
And I think it is a great example too of, all of our lessons can really be adapted to other grade levels just based on what you're currently teaching. So that one, it can span across 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. And our others too, like the one Gretchen showed you, minor adaptations can make it really applicable to different grade levels.
Yeah, this Introduction to Programming lesson I've actually done with a middle school class, and everybody had a great time. So don't be afraid of adapting it. It can definitely work. Again, and then if your students have been doing Codable, say you've been doing Codable and you want to try something a little bit more advanced, I encourage you to check out some of our advanced introduction lessons. And that'll get into a grade appropriate concept that's not just sequencing and algorithms. We get into conditions, some looping, lots of cool stuff in those lessons. And then I guess the last thing to cover in this area is our cross-content area lesson plans. So if you're looking, again, for middle school, the My First App Pizza Party lesson is a great option for older students. We do have a K-2 option for this, a pre-reader option as well. But I think that this, Bree was saying.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this one, is going to be very easy to do for other grade levels. It is super open-ended. So this is an inquiry-based learning lesson, the style of this lesson. It's almost like giving kids a blank slate to work together to come up with their own ideas. So these video prompts are kind of going to guide them through the problem, and then they're really spending most of their time solving it. And that can look in so many different ways for so many different ages. So that will be a great one to try with your older kids too.
Yeah. So you can see students work in pairs or groups to complete the daily inquiry sheet accompanying the video of the day. So your download resources is going to include all of those video inquiry sheets. And lastly, I guess we'll show robotics. So there is a science lesson here that Bree developed. It's one of my favorites, actually. It's really fun.
Thanks.
I'm a science nerd.
You need some materials for it, though.
Yeah, you do need materials, but I think it's worth it. And then we've got some writing lessons that are K through 5 adapted already for you. So if you want to do that, you can do that. We have an ELA lesson, which is pretty cool. Create your own adventure coding challenge,
which is also very easy to adapt. And we gave an example of a book, but you guys could use any kind of other story that you have in mind or that's relevant to your classroom too.
And then we've obviously, this is a fan favorite. Oh, I did that. That's weird. We'll have to fix that. But we do have a robotics lesson available using Dash and Dot. So if you have Dash and Dot in your classroom and you want to do a robotics lesson, it is K-2 appropriate, and it's an introduction to robotics. So check that out. And last but not least, well, I guess we can pause.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions coming in. So I saw somebody, it's a little higher up in the chat, but somebody was asking about collaboration with younger students, specifically kindergarten. I think that's totally up to you. Collaboration in programming is huge, right? Pair programming is an awesome thing. I think if you are looking for social emotional benefits, I think that's a great way to do it. Kindergartners at this point in the year, I know it's December, may not be in a place where they can work productively in pairs. That's going to be dependent upon individual classrooms. So, I mean, if you have kids at the point in the year where they're ready to do partner work and engage in conversation and work together, I think it's a great idea. If you find that it may detract from their learning, then maybe they're not ready for it. So I think that's definitely your call. I would recommend doing it if you feel your classroom is there, though.
Cool. Any others?
Yes, so Steve S. was asking about building towers, which is coming soon. It's not available in the app right now, that activity, but we do have an unplugged lesson that is available for that. So if you want to do the towers activity unplugged, it is available as one of our lesson plans in our lesson library. And that is just a quick game, kind of teaching kids about properties and some of our classes in objects in Bug World.
It's a really fun card game.
Yeah, it's just teaching kids, and there are vocab cards too. So I would definitely recommend going over the vocabulary and getting into the game. Kids are experimenting with different properties and values and adding values together. It's pretty math heavy. It's definitely a partner activity. It's fun, cool pictures, cool art. I would definitely check that out.
Yeah, one thing to note is that all of these activities are going to be available beyond just the hour of code. So if you have a successful week, say you invited a fellow teacher to your room to see this stuff happening, and they love it, they can go and do this another week. It does not need to be during the hour of code. You can do this throughout the year. All of these activities are available to you throughout the year when we add the tower building activity. It'll be available on our Hour of Code website where we've been going this entire time. Instead of being grayed out, it'll be clickable. So you can feel free to use that lesson later on if you decide to. It's really rad. It's a cool lesson. So yeah. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to go over is how to get certificates for your students. If you have like we said, if you have a Codable account that you're using and you have students imported, you'll be able to print certificates with all their names on them from your teacher dashboard. That's what I recommend. That's what I would do. I'm always up for saving time. But if you would like to, if you still don't want to create an account and you want to just get a certificate for your kids, I'm going to show you where you can do that. So you're just going to go back to this Kodable.com/Hour of Code site. Scroll down here below the lesson plans and into your email address, and we will send you a certificate and that can be printed on your school printers. And you can add students' names. It's really cool. It's a great certificate, I think. And there will also be at the end of every challenge. Let me find it here. So at the end of every Hour of Code challenge, you can actually click get your certificate. This button will turn green, and your students will see a certificate pop up that can be printed from that device. So if they have access to a printer, they can just print their own. If they're playing without saving, it will not have their name on it. If you're playing without an account, it will not have your name on it. If they are playing with their class code, it will have their name on it. So something to keep in mind. All right, that is everything. I know we have a lot of questions that we want to run through. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. Does anybody, if you do have questions that you want us to answer, go ahead and post them in the chat. Send them to us on Twitter at Codable. We are monitoring that as well because we're great at multitasking. Okay, so does Codable share student data with third parties? No, we do not. Feel free to check our privacy policy. We will never share student data. We got into how to teach young students pre-K to first grade. We talked a little bit about managing multiple classes, multiple grades. We talked about how I can get other teachers to join. Do they need to finish all the activities? No, your students do not need to finish. If they don't finish, that's okay. They can finish at home, especially if they're playing on a school account. If you want to log in and create an account, then they can save their progress and come back to it later. Otherwise, they will lose their progress if they log out, but don't feel like they have to finish. If they don't finish, they can always come back and try it again another time. We never had a problem with kids complaining about having to do things again. It's funny, the teachers tend to get worried about it, but the kids are like, okay. Okay, do you offer free PD for teachers? We offer these webinars from time to time. We do not offer structured PD courses for free, but we do have a variety of PD options available. Also, a training call is included in all of our school plans. So if you are a Codable School subscriber and you haven't been onboarded by Bree, you should get in touch with us because we have PD for you. Yes. Can I Skype with your class? Can we Skype with your class? We would love to. So email me, Gretchen@Kodable.com. If the time is available, I would love to talk with your class. I'm not going to speak for Bree, but I think that she would probably enjoy it as well. Yes. We talked about middle school activities. We talked about JavaScript. Does Codable require Flash? No, we do not require Flash. Can Codable be used with pupils with additional learning needs? Yes. Codable is not designed for students with special needs. However, it is commonly used in that context. We are not the experts there. That is your domain. If you teach students with special needs, then feel free to give it a try and evaluate it and see if it's something that works for your kids. We would love to hear about it.
Yeah, we recently did a feature update for colorblind students. So we have that on our blog. We will send that link in the chat as well. So you guys can learn a little bit more about it. Fun fact, our designer is actually colorblind. So he did some awesome work to make that happen.
Yeah. So there's
super proud of that. Yeah.
The ability to turn that on for any students who are colorblind and need that assistance. How long does a unit of coding take for other schools? It really depends on your school and what you define as a unit. Some schools only participate in the hour of code once a year. They just do the hour of code and then they're done, and that's fine. Others are teaching teaching coding throughout the school year, usually once a week for about an hour. And there are 10 coding units in Codable. Each unit is about 5 weeks long. So they range from beginner all the way to advanced. And if you are doing, it really depends on what you feel up to and what you can fit in your schedule. If you have questions about this and you want to talk a little bit more about going beyond an hour of code, I would be happy to have that conversation with you. I do that a lot with different schools. I work with so many schools on how to do that, how to implement. We also have a series on our blog about implementing computer science at your school and the 4 stages of doing that, how to sort of roll out over 4 stages. We can share that with you. It's a great resource. It's basically the culmination of all the knowledge that I've had with years of talking to schools. Okay, my students are experienced with Codable. Is there anything new or more advanced they could do this year? They are gifted students in grades 1 through 7. Yes, we went over some of the advanced tutorials, the advanced activities. I think any of those would be a great fit for gifted students or students who are experienced with Codable. Can you create a class for free? Yes, you can. Just go to Kodable.com and click Get Started, and that's where you can create your account. Do you recommend iPads or Chromebooks for kindergarten? I recommend iPads, definitely. Can I get PD credit for this webinar? I'm not sure. We're not working with any districts directly to provide credit for this webinar. I would ask them. I'm more than happy to share this link, and I'm not sure if I can get the chat archive, but I'm willing to vouch for anybody who says they were here. So if you watched this far, I think you have earned an hour of PD credit. Okay. Can you list ways that Codable can be integrated with reading, writing, or math for grade 4? Any lessons that are Common Core aligned will
it will be listed in the lesson by the grade level and the standard. So some of the ones we showed you tonight, the math, actually it wasn't the math, the social studies has ELA standards. We have a whole ELA unit, which is aligned, and it goes by grade level. And yes, there are grade 4 standards there. Don't know them off the top of my head.
What grade levels can this be used for? Oh, Codables, I don't know why I kept that question. We covered that. But anyway, Codable is K to 5
and beyond.
But it can be adapted for many other grades. The last question, can I transfer students from a class I set up last year to a new class so that they don't lose their progress? Yes. And if you are in this Google Doc that I posted at the beginning of the video, it'll be in the comments section once this video is complete, but there is a link to how to do that. You can also go to support.codable.com, and we have tons of articles on how to manage classes, how to manage students, how to view progress, how to, basically any question that we get a lot, the answer is there. Yeah, do we have any other questions in the chat?
Just a bunch of folks saying thank you and they're excited.
Cool, thank you guys. This is so much fun. We look forward to the Hour of Code every year. We work so hard, basically from August.
The whole year.
Well, the whole year, yes. But from August until November is just Hour of Code. Hour of Code.
Yes.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Please share with us if you are able to share photos and videos and all of the excitement happening with your students in your classroom. Please, please, please share those with us. We love that. We have a feed coming up in our team Slack that has all of our Twitter mentions. So just mention us on Twitter at Codable and we'll see it and we will love it. It makes us so happy. So, and if you are interested in having a Skype with your class, please email us. Again, my email address is gretchen@codable.com without a T.
And I'm Brie, B-R-I-E, @codable.com. Like the cheese.
Brie like the cheese. All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
See you next week.
Yeah, we're so excited. Bye.